All right, so we're live everywhere. Got a little caught up today, so ended up not getting to the podcast when I usually do. Trying to avoid that happening, but more important than anything is that when we make a commitment to do 5 episodes a week, we are doing 5 episodes a week, no matter what. So we're here, we're late, but we're here, and we're ready to do a show. As you're tuning in, if you haven't checked out the podcast before, make sure that you are saving the name of the show, the Elite Development Podcast, on all major platforms. And make sure that you are going to check out other episodes. If you have tuned in and you have gotten value, make sure that you are make sure that you are going on, reviewing the show, letting other people know about it, because again, the goal is to start building this podcast up. And the more we get from all of you, the better and better and better we can do that. So as you tune in, I hope you're having a fantastic day. And we're a little later than normal, but we're here and we're ready to do a podcast. So let's get into it. Today, we're talking about understanding the roles of your coaches. And let's go. And let's go in 3, 2, 1. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Elite Development Podcast, the number one show for athletes looking to gain an edge on their opponents and build their dream careers in sport. I'm your host, Kenny Dusseault. And before we really get into the show today, I wanted to quickly give a couple of shout outs because I am super hyped up. The new year's off to a really awesome start. I've got 2 athletes competing this weekend at Silver Gloves for boxing. At the end of the month, I've got a couple of more competing across Canada. And then leading into February, it is just action-packed every single weekend. And for myself as a coach, that's what I've been striving for years, to get to the point where basically every single weekend I have athletes competing and athletes working. And it just kind of hit me this week that it's like, man, we're there. We're there. Everything is exactly where I was hoping it would be. And that's just super exciting. So I'm super happy about that. But let's get into the show now. And the show today is about understanding the roles of your coaches. So why I decided to put together an episode about this specifically is, well, first off, I want to start it off by saying I'm not here to call out any specific coaches or, any specific people. But the reason that I wanted to talk about understanding the roles of your coaches is I feel like people get lost in the fact that they don't understand the difference between all the coaches that they have on their team as they're growing in their career. As you advance more in your career, you're able to hire more coaches. You've got, someone like me, a strength coach on your team. You've got a head coach for your sport. You've got other, I work with a lot of MMA athletes. You've got coaches for, all the different arts. You might have a nutritionist, all these different kinds of coaches on your team. And what I often find is people lose track of what the roles of those coaches are. I have athletes telling me that, their MMA coach or their boxing coach or whoever has designed them a strength and conditioning program. And then when I ask to see it, they show it to me and it is just god awful. But in their mind, they're trusting their coach. So because they're trusting their coach, they think that what they're doing is great. And what I really want to bring attention to with this episode is why different coaches are important and what you should and shouldn't listen to them about. And so, what I so often hear from athletes is their fight coaches are dropping them strength and conditioning programs that have absolutely zero translation over to their sport. Or the other thing I see a lot is so many gyms out there that run these strength and conditioning classes, which are just a mess of random bullshit exercises thrown together to make a killer workout with little to no actual translation to the sport, other than the fact that they're hard. And if you've ever tuned into this show or followed me on social media or spoken to me at all, you know my stance on working hard just for the sake of working hard without any actual translation or any actual focus back to the sport. And so honestly, as somebody who's put over half his life into the strength and conditioning industry, hearing these things like these strength and conditioning classes that you see at gyms that are just god awful workouts, or these random programs that coaches are throwing together for their athletes, it just pisses me off, because really and truly, if you're a coach that's just throwing a few exercises together and telling your athlete to use this as their strength and conditioning program, or if you're running one of these strength and conditioning classes that's getting planned out 20 minutes before the class starts and is just kind of a random BS workout thrown up on a whiteboard for everybody to run through until they feel like a puke, ask yourself, is that actually what's best for your athlete? Like, you doing this, is that you having your athlete's best interest in mind? Or is that you just checking a box to say, okay, he worked hard and his legs hurt, so we did our job? Because if you're running one of these classes, or if you're a coach just throwing random exercises together and you truly believe that you have your athlete's best interest in mind, would you not want them to work with a qualified professional in order to actually make improvements in these areas? Why are you doing this shit for your athletes instead of recommending them to work with a qualified coach for their strength and conditioning that actually understands strength and conditioning and isn't just an MMA coach that thinks he knows how to work out, or a boxing coach that thinks he knows how to work out? And again, I really want to reiterate, my goal here is not to call out any one specific coach. I understand that you're trying your best. You're working towards trying to help your athletes. And I empathize with that. I get it. I'm glad that you're out there doing that. But instead of continuing to throw this random crap at them, why would you not want them to level up? Why would you not want them to see a qualified professional that can get them better results? So, on that topic, for myself, I'm a strength and conditioning coach, and I'm not a fighter. I work with a lot of fighters. So I understand the mechanics of how to throw a punch or how to throw a kick, but you will never, and I cannot stress that enough, you will never catch me giving advice on how to do either of those things. You will never catch me trying to correct a fight technique in one of my athletes, or claim that I know something more than a fight coach knows about something skill related, because that is not what I do. I build athletes. I build bigger, stronger, faster, better conditioned athletes to step into a fight. But the fight skill itself is not my area of expertise. Therefore, I'm not trying to correct that. I'm not trying to help them with that, because that is not what I do. However, so if you're an athlete, what my invitation is for you is to better understand the roles of your coaches. Now, this is not to say that some coaches don't have knowledge in other fields, but as a rule, your MMA coach understands MMA. Listen to them, learn from them, and absorb their wisdom. Your strength and conditioning coach is spending all that time that your MMA coach is studying MMA, studying strength and conditioning. So why would you not want to listen to them when it comes to your strength and conditioning work? Why are you listening to the coach who understands the skill of the game, but doesn't understand the ins and outs of how athletes are actually built, instead of listening to the coach that spends all his time or all her time studying those things? Your MMA coach is likely not an expert when it comes to proper conditioning for the sport of MMA. And I want to reinforce that I'm saying likely not an expert. There are some that take the time to properly get certified, properly do the research, and actually understand it. But for the most part, you see these classes that these MMA gyms are running, or these boxing gyms are running, and they are not structured training plans to help condition for MMA. They're hard-ass workouts thrown at the end of a sparring session, which is not the ideal way to properly train yourself for the sport of mixed martial arts, or any other sport for that matter. So if your MMA coach is trying to tell you that they understand more about what you need from a conditioning standpoint, from a physical standpoint, than your strength and conditioning coach, if your strength and conditioning coach is telling you otherwise, when it comes to this area, who do you feel like you should listen to? Should you listen to the person who studies the skill of the game, understanding how to game plan, all of these things, or the guy or the girl who spends their time studying physical development for athletes, the strength coach? Now, one common thing I hear when I talk about this is athletes saying, well, why would I listen to another coach when my MMA coach understands my sport? Why would I listen to you when you're not a fighter and my MMA coach, all he does is work with fighters? Wouldn't they understand conditioning for MMA? And again, yes, maybe. And if that's you and you're not quite convinced yet, I get it. But understand this. The definition of conditioning is how well an athlete can meet the energy demands of their sport. So for myself, as I developed my career in strength and conditioning, all my studying, all my research, all my experience revolves specifically around building programs focused on improving the conditioning of athletes. Building programs focused on improving an athlete's ability to meet energy demands of their sport. Nothing else. Whereas your MMA coach, your boxing coach, those sport-specific coaches that you work with are spending their time learning the sport, spending their time improving their ability to coach the skills, spending their time improving their ability to game plan properly for each individual athlete. So while they're doing all of that, and the strength coach is spending their time focused on teaching athletes how to better meet the energy demands of their sport, who are you listening to? Why are you listening to the wrong one? And again, I cannot reiterate this enough. My goal is not to call out any one specific coach here. I understand that they're doing their best. My goal here is specifically to help athletes understand what the roles are of their coaches and who they should be listening to in specific instances. And if your coach has trouble with you listening to somebody who is better qualified than them in a certain area to give you advice, that's a whole other problem in itself. So, regardless of the sport, an athlete needs to be strong. An athlete needs to be fast. An athlete needs to be conditioned, and an athlete needs to be explosive. These are specialties of a good strength and conditioning coach. The specialties of the MMA coach or the boxing coach or the Muay Thai coach, jiu-jitsu coach, et cetera, are going to be revolving around game plans, techniques, skill sets, and more like that. But learning the intricacies of how to develop these physical qualities for the sport are typically not the top priority on that list, as they have so much more to focus on. So again, it's not a bad thing on them, but if that's not their top priority, learning these things, then they probably aren't the top person you should be listening to when it comes to your strength and conditioning, when it comes to your physical development. So again, my goal is not to call anyone out. My goal is to help you, the athlete, better understand the roles of your coaches and better understand how to best prepare yourself for competition. I say it at the beginning of every episode. The goal of this show is to give you an edge on your opponent and build your dream careers in sport. So this is one of those things that understanding is going to actually help you develop into a better version of yourself as an athlete. Understand that your sport-specific coaches are the ones to make the game plan. But if you truly want to set yourself up above the rest, stop doing random shit workouts thinking they're developing you into a beast. They're not. Start working on proper conditioning protocols to help you develop specifically for the sport. Now, again, you don't need to take my advice. Your random hard workouts that you're doing right now that have no structure might be working for you. But is your goal to get to where you are right now? Or is your goal to make this sport your career? To win championships, to make millions of dollars? If you want to be in the top 1% of athletes, you can't train like the other 99%. So that is it. That is all. I hope that's something that you can think about. But That's it for me. I appreciate you guys all tuning in. I appreciate everyone who takes the time to join me on these lives and everybody that is tuning in and listening to the replay, whether back on the podcast, on the YouTube channel, or wherever else it is you are finding this show. Once again, my ask of you, if you've gotten value from the show, is to share this with a teammate, share this with a coach, share this with a friend, share this with someone who needs to hear the message. My goal here is to help you better understand your approach to sport, help you better understand your training for sport, and in turn, help you better prepare yourself and help you build that dream career you've always been after. So, thank you for tuning in. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll talk to you all again soon.